The silence in the lawyer's conference room was heavy enough to crush a man, but I wasn't the one struggling to breathe. My wife, Sarah, sat across the mahogany table, looking at me with eyes that had once promised forever but now only calculated percentages. She had just declared, on record, that the winning lottery ticket was purchased solely with her separate funds, independent of our marital assets, and therefore, the $2.5 million was hers and hers alone to take into her new life without me. She didn't see the single sheet of paper I was holding under the table, the one that was about to turn her victory lap into a head-on collision. My name is Arthur, and up until 6 months ago, I was a man who believed in the durability of shared struggle. I'm 42, a structural engineer by trade, a profession that teaches you that cracks in a foundation often remain invisible until the weight becomes too great to bear. Sarah and I had been married for 12 years. We were the couple everyone assumed would make it to the finish line, boring, reliable, synchronized. We finished each other's sentences, not out of romance, but out of routine. We were paying off a mortgage in a suburb that was slightly too expensive for us, driving cars that were slightly too old, and dreaming of a retirement that was slightly too far away. It wasn't a bad life. It was a normal life. But normality, I learned, is just a thin coat of paint over resentment. The unraveling didn't start with the lottery win. It started much earlier, in the quiet erosion of intimacy. Sarah, who worked in high-end real estate, had begun to look at our life with a sneer of dissatisfaction. She wanted the vacations her clients took, she wanted the freedom to not look at price tags. I was the budgeter, the one who said, "Not this month," the one who anchored us to reality. I thought I was being responsible. She thought I was a cage. Before I go any further, tell me in the comments where you're watching from, because I truly wonder if betrayal looks the same in London or Tokyo as it does here in Chicago. The day the ticket was bought was a Tuesday. It was raining, a cold, miserable drizzle that seeped into your bones. Sarah had called me from her car, sounding frantic. She needed to stop at a convenience store for gas and a bottle of wine because she had had a terrible showing with a difficult client. She was stressed, her voice tight with that specific frequency of irritation I had learned to navigate carefully. She told me later that she bought the ticket on a whim. She said she felt lucky. In reality, she was desperate for an exit. When the numbers were drawn 3 days later, we were sitting on the couch watching a rerun of a sitcom we'd seen a dozen times. I checked the numbers on my phone, laughed, and tossed it onto the cushion. I read them out loud, joking about how close we usually weren't. Sarah went still. She grabbed the ticket from her purse, her hands trembling so violently she nearly ripped the paper. She didn't scream. She didn't jump up and down. She looked at the ticket, then she looked at me, and for a split second, I saw a look of pure, unadulterated terror. It wasn't the terror of winning, it was the terror of having to share it. "We won," she whispered. "Arthur, we won." We hugged, we cried, we opened a bottle of champagne. We stayed up until 4 in the morning planning our future. We talked about paying off the house, helping her sister, finally taking that trip to Italy. It was the happiest night of my life. I didn't know it was a performance. Over the next 2 weeks, while we waited for the money to be processed, Sarah changed. It was subtle at first. She stopped wearing her wedding ring around the house, claiming her fingers were swollen from stress. She started taking phone calls in the garage. She changed the passcode on her phone. When I asked about booking the Italy trip, she was vague. "Let's just wait until the check clears," she said, her eyes sliding away from mine. "Let's not jinx it." I felt a cold knot forming in my stomach. I'm an engineer, I look for stress points. The stress points were everywhere. She was pulling away, physically and emotionally. She was preparing for something, reinforcing her own walls while tearing down ours. Then came the Tuesday evening when I came home to find half the closet empty. There was a note on the kitchen counter. Not a letter. A note. It said, I need space to process everything. I'm staying at a hotel. Don't call me. I called her. Straight to voicemail. I called her sister. No answer. 2 days later, I was served with divorce papers at my office. It was a blitzkrieg. She was filing for irreconcilable differences, but the kicker was in the financial disclosures. She was claiming the lottery winnings were separate property. Her lawyer, a shark named Vance who charged more per hour than I made in a week, had constructed a narrative that she had bought the ticket with allowance money she had set aside, and that our marriage had been functionally over for months prior to the win. I sat in my office, staring at the legal jargon, feeling the world tilt on its axis. It wasn't just the money. I could have lived without the money. It was the calculation. She had looked me in the eye, planned our future, and all the while she was strategizing how to cut me out. She didn't want a new life with me, she wanted a new life instead of me. I fell into a depression that felt like drowning in quicksand. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I replayed every conversation, every moment of the last 12 years, looking for the signs I had missed. If this story is hitting you in any way, take a moment to like and subscribe. It truly helps this channel grow, and it helps me know I'm not shouting into the void. For weeks, I was paralyzed. My lawyer, a friend from college named Ben, told me it was going to be an uphill battle. In our state, lottery winnings during marriage are generally community property, but Sarah was playing dirty. She had affidavits from friends claiming we were estranged. She had moved money. She was willing to burn the house down to keep the gold. But then, the engineer in me woke up. I stopped mourning the marriage and started analyzing the structure of her lie. Her entire case rested on the premise that she bought the ticket with her own, separate cash, creating a clear distinction from our joint funds. She swore up and down in her initial statements that she used a $20 bill she had kept in her glove box. I remembered that Tuesday. I remembered the rain. I remembered her frantic call. I started digging. I went through our joint accounts, nothing. I went through my personal accounts, nothing. But then I remembered something about Sarah's habits. She was tech-savvy, but careless with settings. She loved using Apple Pay for everything because she hated digging for her wallet. I logged into the cloud account we shared for family purchases. It was a tangled mess of subscriptions, app downloads, and cloud storage fees. But deep in the settings, there was a log of devices and payment methods. Sarah had a bad habit of losing credit cards, so a year ago, I had added my personal business credit card, a card I use strictly for work expenses and travel, to her digital wallet as a backup emergency source. I told her to use it only if she was stranded. She had likely forgotten it was even there, buried under her own debit cards and loyalty points. I pulled up the transaction history for my business card. There it was. The date of the win. The time stamped 6:42 p.m. The location, the convenience store on 5th and Main. The amount, $20. She hadn't used cash. She hadn't used her card. In her rush, in her flustered state during the rainstorm, she must have tapped her phone against the reader, and the default setting, or perhaps a glitch, or perhaps fate, had cycled to my card. I stared at the screen for an hour. The anger that had been burning me alive suddenly cooled into something hard and sharp. I didn't call Ben immediately. I printed the statement. Then I called the credit card company and requested a detailed, certified receipt of the transaction, specifically showing the itemized purchase. It arrived 3 days later. Lottery ticket X1. $20. I had the smoking gun. But I didn't want to just win the case. I wanted her to admit who she was. I wanted to see the mask fall. So, I told Ben to set up a deposition. I told him to let Sarah and Vance believe I was desperate to settle. I wanted them confident. I wanted them arrogant. Which brings us back to the mahogany table. Sarah looked impeccable. She was wearing a suit that probably cost $5,000, borrowed against the future she thought she had secured. She looked at me with a mixture of pity and annoyance. "Arthur," she said, her voice smooth and practiced. "Let's be adults. The marriage was dead. The ticket was my luck, my initiative. Why are you trying to punish me for being fortunate?" "I'm not trying to punish you, Sarah," I said, keeping my voice low. "I'm just trying to understand the timeline. You claim you used cash from your glove box?" "Yes," she sighed. "I've said this 100 times. It was my emergency cash." "And you're certain of that? Under oath?" Ben asked, playing his part perfectly. "Absolutely," Sarah snapped. I remember distinctively handing the clerk the bill. Vance, her lawyer, leaned back, looking bored. "We have the affidavits, we have her testimony. Unless you have footage from inside the store, which we know has been overwritten, this is a waste of time. My client is offering you a settlement of $50,000 to walk away. Take it." $50,000. From $2.5 million. It was an insult designed to humiliate. "I don't want the $50,000, I said." Sarah rolled her eyes. "Don't be greedy, Arthur. It's pathetic." "I'm not being greedy," I said. "I'm being precise." I reached under the table and pulled out the single sheet of paper. I placed it face down on the mahogany. "Sarah, do you remember when you lost your wallet in Cabo 3 years ago? And I loaded my business platinum card onto your phone so you could get a taxi?" She frowned, a tiny wrinkle appearing between her eyebrows. "What does that have to do with anything?" "You never removed it," I said. The room went very quiet. The air conditioning hummed, sounding like a distant engine. "On the night of the purchase," I continued, "you didn't use cash. Maybe you thought you did. Maybe you've told yourself that lie so many times you believe it. But you tapped your phone." I flipped the paper over. "This is the certified transaction record from my business account. It shows the purchase of one lottery ticket at 6:42 p.m. on the date in question. The card used is solely in my name. The funds used to purchase the ticket were not marital assets, and they certainly weren't yours. They were mine. Technically, Sarah, you didn't buy that ticket. I did. Stay with me, because what happened next changed everything." Sarah looked at the paper. She didn't touch it. She just stared at it as if it were a venomous snake. The color drained from her face so completely she looked like a wax figure. Vance snatched the paper. He read it once, then twice. His jaw clenched. He looked at Sarah, and for the first time, his shark-like demeanor vanished, replaced by the panic of a man realizing his client had led him off a cliff. "Is this authentic?" Vance whispered to her, his voice hissing. I. Sarah stammered. Her composure shattered. The arrogance evaporated, revealing the scared, greedy person beneath. "I thought I used. I didn't check, the phone just beeped." "You bought a winning lottery ticket with my credit card," I said, my voice steady, though my heart was hammering against my ribs. "Legally, since I paid for it with a business account that predates our marriage and is excluded from our commingling agreement, an argument could be made that the ticket is entirely mine. But even if it's considered marital property, the fact that you lied under oath about the source of funds to defraud me, well, I think the judge will find that interesting." Sarah looked up at me. Her eyes were wet. "Arthur, please. We can talk about this." "We are talking about it," I said. "On the record." The power in the room shifted so violently it was almost physical. Minutes ago, she was the queen dictating terms to a peasant. Now, she was a fraud caught in a lie that could cost her everything. "I want 50-50, she whispered. "I'll agree to 50-50. Just, put that away." I looked at her. I saw the woman I had loved. I saw the fear. And I realized I didn't want to destroy her. I just wanted to be free of her dishonesty. No, I said. Vance looked at me. What do you want? I want the house, I said. I want my retirement accounts untouched. And regarding the lottery winnings. I paused. I let the silence stretch until it was painful. I want 75%, I said. And you cover my legal fees. If you don't agree right now, I walk out this door, I file this evidence with the court, and I sue for 100% plus damages for fraud. And given your perjury today, I'll likely get it. Sarah put her head in her hands. She knew it. Vance knew it. They signed the agreement an hour later. I walked out of that office into the bright afternoon sun. I felt lighter than I had in years. The money was substantial, yes. It changed my financial reality. But the victory wasn't the cash. The victory was reclaiming my reality from her gaslighting. She had tried to rewrite our history to justify her greed, and in the end, the truth, cold, hard, and documented, had prevailed. Sarah moved to a smaller apartment across town. We don't speak. I heard through friends that she spins a story about how I tricked her, how she was the victim of a technicality. It doesn't bother me. I know what happened. I used the money to start my own firm. I travel. I bought a small cabin by a lake where I sit and watch the water, grateful not for the fortune, but for the freedom. I learned that the most expensive thing you can ever pay for is a relationship that costs you your dignity. So, I leave you with this question: if you held the winning ticket to a new life, but the price was betraying the person who stood by you when you had nothing, would you cash it in? Let me know in the comments below.